Hello students, a very good morning to all of you. Today I am going to talk about disaster mitigation strategies, emerging trends in disaster mitigation. In our last lecture, we have already discussed the meaning of disaster mitigation and also the various topics involved, various measures involved in disaster mitigation and the various active plans involved in disaster mitigation. And in today's lecture, we are going to discuss mainly, first of all, we are going to learn prevention and mitigation strategies. This is the most important part, and then we will move to examples of mitigation strategies. From the example we can understand it very easily, and then the requirements for effective mitigation. Why effective mitigation is required for the disaster management cycle to control the life loss and also property loss for a long period for a long term basis. So let's start with the prevention strategies, mitigation strategies. Actually, this is the success of mitigation strategy is the responsibility of the individuals and also the community as a whole. Each individual and all the organization within the community have to play their respective roles to encourage and support mitigation activities. There are Actually, it is defined as 6 principles to make mitigation more effective and sustainable, and these are the maintaining and enhancing environmental quality, and then maintaining and enhancing the quality of life. Then, after that, the responsibility for disasters and recognizing that sustainable and vital local economics and essential for mitigation, identifying and ensuring both intra and intergenerational equity, and adopting a the conscious building approach involving all levels and starting at the local level. And mainly, prevention and mitigation strategy can be handled by adopting these 4 strategies. These are included in this slide. The first one is land use planning and building codes. Then essential infrastructure. I am going to discuss this in the next slides. Then structural works and landscape and the environment. I think you can understand the terminologies, not exact meaning, but you can guess what I am going to discuss. So, in case of the examples of mitigation strategies, it can include the various strategies like the community education. This is the main uh, part. This is the main strategy can be adopted for the awareness program. The community awareness campaign can be taken. This can increase the knowledge of any events, that this is the study of disaster management at the graduating level, that is that you are in BBA and BCA, and at this stage you are learning disaster management. This is also a campaign. Then the land use planning and design decisions that avoid the developments and the community infrastructure in areas that prone to hazards and hazard scientific control activities. Now let's discuss all these strategies, mainly all these 4 strategies in detail in the next slides. The first one is the land use planning and building codes. What is this? You can see from the slide that land use planning can be effective method to reduce the impact of natural hazards. As I already said that the elevation of any building where they are vulnerable or prone, the area that is vulnerable or prone to the flood or flash flood in the coastal area, in this case we can elevate, we can lift the some buildings, some houses to stop the effect of the, to control the effect of flood, or in case of the area which are vulnerable to earthquake, then we can construct buildings for in wooden houses. So these are some land use planning or building codes. Here you can see the to reduce the natural hazards and where possible avoid risk to life, property and environmental system from the natural hazards. Then the regulatory frameworks for buildings, these are some acts and regulation codes. These can be given by the current government or the central government of any country, and ensure building and infrastructure are designed and constructed to standards that minimize the likelihood of injury during the disaster event. So you can compare the, you can correlate the fact with that Japanese, they are using such regulation and codes so that they can control the effect of disaster like earthquake. So most level of government implement requirements that control the land use planning and the building design and construction and reduce risk from the natural hazards. So in this strategy we can understand that this strategy, actually this fact have to be, this strategy have to be handled by the current government so that they can implement some acts and regulation and codes to construct buildings so that ultimately we can control the loss of life, property and also our ecological system. Then the essential infrastructure. Essential infrastructure is that here from this a community's social and economic well-being relies upon the communities of the continuity of essential services provided by the critical infrastructure. Mainly this infrastructure supports most basic needs like safe drinking water, food, clothes, reliable transport, accessible public health service, and energy for homes. Energy means electric energy, and the industry, access to banking, finance, and government services, and also communication networks connect us socially and in business. So if we have the all the essential infrastructure well equipped, that is the, these are the basic needs of our life: drinking water, food, transport, public health service, energy, then access to banking, finance, government. So if these are well equipped, then we can handle any natural disaster. Then other region or other country, those they, when they are not well equipped, so we can compare this. Well equipped means well infrastructure, essential infrastructure is very needed for to control any, to handle any natural or any man-made disaster. So mitigation the effects of disaster events and ensuring the reliability of essential services and the infrastructure requires a variety of strategies including the compliances with the building planning regulations, land use planning. So these are some basic need. These must be well equipped to control the any disaster or hazard. Next, the structural works. Structural disasters mitigation strategies involve application of engineered solution as disaster mitigation strategies, including the physical structure which are constructed or modified to reduce the eliminate the disaster impact. So this is the use of technology, so that the higher impact of technology is there, we know. So here is the main concern. The using of technology is the main concern, how to handle various natural or man-made disasters, the physical impact also, by the help of civil engineers, and also by the help of mechanical engineers, we can design with such an impactful structure so that they cannot be destroyed by any disaster. Then structural works to mitigate natural hazards can include but are not limited to rock walls, drainage works, improved road infrastructure, and flood mitigation dam. So by using technology in the present scenario, we can apply some technological improvement with the regular basis structure so that we can decrease the negative impact of disasters. As I have repeatedly said that we cannot stop, we cannot control the natural or any man-made, some man-made disaster cannot be controllable, but at least we can handle, we can minimize the loss of life and properties by adopting some strategies. So here the use of technology, and we are going to discuss the use of technology, how to how we can use the technological improvement to handle natural disaster in the unit 4. Then landscape and environment. Here in the landscape and environment, here you can see the appropriate management and protection of landscape and the environment is important. Yes, all organizations including government at all levels must consider the effect of development related to landscape and environment, and the climate change that can be predicted. Now few climate change, few natural disasters like, but earthquake cannot be predicted right now, but scientists are all working on it, and they are likely to have some data so that they can predict at least 1 hour before any earthquake can occur, earthquake happen. So some climate change prediction should be considered when planning for mitigation of natural hazards, like climate change is predicted to influence the magnitude, frequency, and severity of natural disaster events, including increasing sea levels, intensity of cyclones. We know that the increasing sea level and intensity of cyclones and storms and other changes to weather patterns can be predicted, and by the past history of Indian climate, any other countries also, but we are concerned about the Indian disaster management. So in Indian, by the past history of Indian climate, we can say the low-lying coastal areas and associated coastal environments and landscapes will most vulnerable to the impact of these hazards. So from this assessment of coastal based development is undertaken to ensure the development protects and also conserve coastal resources. This also enhances the resilience of coastal communities. and this is can be this is the actually we have already studied this in our previous lecture, that the disaster profile of India. So in from with this concept, with the disaster profile of any other countries also, this mitigation step can be adopted. So some this disaster profile is very much important for the mitigation purpose. Disaster profile can be used to make some strategies so that we at least we can handle this. Like the in Jharkhand we can see the drought is a very common disaster in Jharkhand. So why how do we know that drought is very common to Jharkhand? We know from the disaster profile of Jharkhand. So the climate change process is very important to climate change prediction is very important to for the mitigation purpose. Now why the effective mitigation is required, and we know that the effective mitigation is required, that the increasing education and awareness of threats and hazards as well as their risk. We must know about all the disasters and also their causes, the reasons behind the causing of that particular disaster, and also their effects also. If we know the effects of any disaster, then we must be aware of that and we can protect ourselves during the disaster. If we have the at least the knowledge about the effects, then identifying actions of risk reduction that are agreed upon by the stakeholders and the public, then focusing resources on the greatest risk and vulnerabilities. Means if if anyone is vulnerable, so we have to be more careful about that, about the person or about the region or about the state or country. So we have to focus that particular vulnerable or those who are in those or those country or those part of India or those state which are high risk. Then building partnerships by involving citizens, organization and businesses. Building partnerships means the building code that we have already discussed, and also accurate analysis of all the reasonable and possible mitigation projects, proper support of various forms of traditional mitigation measures wherever it can be put to best use. So, from today's lecture, we are now able to explain what are the strategies for the mitigation, why mitigation is important, and also the main four strategies like the land use planning and building codes, their explanation, then essential what we mean, what do you mean by the essential infrastructure, then what is the meaning of structural works and the landscape and environment, and then the these are examples, and then the requirements for effective mitigation. So uh, we have learned all these in today's lecture, and a clear and comprehensive national disaster policy and mitigation measures that address all the related aspects of disaster management. It should ensure the mitigation is given proper consideration and priority at all concerned levels. So, proper assessment and monitoring of hazards and its vulnerabilities, and this will help in identifying and defining the need of appropriate mitigation measures. So, proper support for various forms of traditional mitigation measures, and a clear organization and planning that is centered on a permanent disaster management center. The center has to keep a constant watch on all aspects of disaster management and advise and government on needs for mitigation programs. So ultimately the awareness campaign, these are main part of disaster management strategies, and also the past history, the profile of any region, these are the main part of disaster mitigation strategies. So today up to this, in the next lecture we are going to discuss some preparedness related issues. So thank you for your attention.